Hello guys, this is Jerry speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM Reacts episode 4 and 3. And today we'll be reacting to Purple Roads episode 15. And we're going to react to this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. There we go.
I'm Carrie Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour, and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show, Barney and Friends. Now, my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carrie Stinson, and this is Purple Roads.
Wow.
Welcome to another episode of Purple Roads. I am thrilled you're here. We've been having so much fun each week, and we're going to have a blast today. We want to thank our sponsor, Infusion HF70 Plus, for presenting and sponsoring Purple Roads.
Wow.
So today I have a friend here who I knew from this other show that was very close to Barney.
Wow.
I have an actor, Larry Brantley, who played this voice that you probably know, which was Wishbone.
Hey, buddy.
Wow.
It's good to see you too. I'm great, man. This is fantastic. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh my God, it's a thrill. It's been a while. I mean, I don't want to say how many years, but it's been
I was trying to do the math, and in dog years we'd both be dead. So I'm not going to say what that was.
Wow.
So,
but it has been a long time since our paths crossed.
Yeah, I know.
I'm very happy for this happy circumstance.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, I've got so many questions and so many things I want to talk about.
All right.
You know, we kind of had this parallel, you know, with us both being here in Texas. So Wishbone was shot in Allen, right?
Correct. So we began principal photography on our television show in summer of 1994.
Okay.
Wow.
And then the show debuted on PBS in October of 1995.
Okay.
The year I was born, and the month that Robin McNeil retired. If you watch this, Robin, continue on.
Couple of differences between your show and my show.
Other than that dinosaur.
Other than a dinosaur and a dog, which was a fairly large. But we shot on 16mm film.
Okay.
And that was very cool, but it also presented some challenges, particularly because the other thing we did was, as you know, the premise of Wishbone was. It was this great little dog, and then he would imagine himself into scenes of classic literature where he would then become the hero of the story. And he would be dressed up as Robin Hood or Sherlock Holmes or the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Now, the challenge there was anytime we spent half of the episode in the contemporary world and half of the episode in the fantasy world, which was period piece. So our art department and production team had to turn the world around every single week. We had 5 days to shoot on film a half-hour episode that half of it took place, you know, in Fantasyland.
Wow.
And so every chance I get, I give a lot of praise to those guys who worked so hard behind the scenes to make all that happen. In our costume department, we actually knew some of the same folks because we kind of stole them away from you.
But then we got them back.
You did get them back. But yeah, so and then the weird thing was, and I do have people ask me this all the time, it's like because they've done their homework and they know that Barney and Wishbone were sort of owned by the same corporate parent company. They're like, oh, you guys must have gotten to go to party all the time. I'm like, I never saw them because we were working all the time. You were always on the road.
Yeah, I was traveling at that time.
And so you said parallel paths. It really was like ships that never meet. You know, we were just all the time working, and then occasionally there'd be like some big event.
Right.
And then our paths would cross, and then it would be like, oh, there's Carrie. I haven't seen him in, what time is it now? You know, and I'd see Bob West, or later I'd see Dean or whatever. So but that was, man, that was a pretty exciting time to be an actor, a young actor in the state of Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, well, we were both young actors.
I hate that you say that in the past tense. It's so true.
Wow.
Well, it's it's all up here. We don't
I went for a run this morning. A lot of it's in my knees now. So,
so I know people want to know, and I want to know because I don't know the story. How did you get the audition? How did you become the voice of Wishbone?
Yeah, it was a very first of all, keep in mind I was literally half the age I am now.
Wow.
So I was very young,
very
extremely
young.
Inexperienced, and I had my first agent for maybe 6 months.
Okay.
Wow.
And she goes, "I'm sending you on a voice audition." I went, "Great, what is that?" I'd never been on a voice audition. So she said, "Well, you're going to go into a recording studio and you're going to, read this copy that they give you,
right?
And you'll be you're going to do the voice of a character,
okay?
And we won't see you, but you'll be the voice of the character." And I thought, okay. Now I get to, and it was actually the old Color Dynamics building. It was where, that was because David Booth used to run the sound there.
Wow.
And so I walk in, first time I've ever met David. I'm expecting there to be somebody there to give me some direction. There wasn't. There was nobody there. It was David.
Right.
He handed me the copy. He said, "Go into that room, stand behind that microphone, and read the copy." And I'm an actor. I've got all these questions like, "What's my motivation, David?"
Sure.
What's, and then I had this, for me, it was kind of a moment of panic.
Wow.
Because that would have been in 93 when I did the audition. And the biggest program on the planet was the one you were on.
Right.
And I had this brief moment of panic where I thought, if I get this, am I going to have to dress up in a big old dog suit? Because for the right amount of money, I'll do it. I'll do it. So I read the copy with no context whatsoever. I had no idea if it was going to be an animated show or I was going to dress up or whatever.
Sure.
Well, that was enough to get me to a callback, which is a second audition for those of you who don't know what that means. And instead of this time going back to the recording studio, we went to a house.
Wow.
And, auditions usually don't go well when the story begins with, "And then I drove up to a house."
Right.
Wow.
But it was in the M Streets. It was a really nice neighborhood. And so we walk in.
And M Streets, for you don't know, that's here in Dallas.
Yeah, it's a very nice old neighborhood. It's not a place where you would roll up and go, "I don't know about this place." But it was very nice. So I walk in, and there's a little sitting room in the front, and there are about 4 or 5 other voice actors there who I know.
Okay.
And so we're all sort of in this holding area, and it became immediately clear to me that this was not at all what I thought it was going to be, because at that moment, I saw a little Jack Russell Terrier walk past. And I'm like, oh, it's a live dog. And my first thought was, well, at least I don't have to dress up in a dog costume.
Wow.
So the audition process was not at all like it was the first time. So the gentleman who was in front of me, he went into the living room. I had a callback. Typically, there are more people there. So wonderful gentleman named Rick Duffield, who was the executive producer and creator of the show. Betty Buckley, our line producer. Burt Guthrie, our cinematographer. And Stephanie Simpson, who was our head writer. And there's Jackie Captain. Who I did not know at the time, but she was the animal trainer for Wishbone, whose real name was Soccer the dog.
And
wow, okay. I've been out at school instead of soccer back when I was a kid, but now it's soccer. Continue on.
Events with
Jackie
and Soccer.
You Jackie.
Yes.
Well, so a little bit of nerd trivia. Jackie actually apprenticed under one of the greatest animal trainers of all time, a guy named Frank Inn.
Okay.
Who did all the Benji movies.
Oh, wow.
Did Lassie back in the day.
Wow.
All that. So he was like a real big guy. And that's, Jackie had chops, man.
Yeah.
So Betty is explaining to the voice actor who's gone in before me, we're going to give you this copy to read. And then while you're reading it, Jackie is going to put the dog through a series of behaviors.
Huh.
And as green as I was, I thought, that's not going to work. That's not going to go well at all.
Wow.
And so... And it didn't. Now, keep in mind, the guy in front of me was a seasoned voice actor. This guy had chops. He knows his stuff. But none of us had ever been in a position like this before. Right. So it's very awkward because he's trying to read and come up with a character voice while Jackie is talking over him, giving commands to the dog.
Sure.
Wow.
And Jackie, if Soccer wasn't cooperating, could be pretty loud. And she would just drive over what he was trying to do in his performance, and I thought, "Oh my, this is going to be terrible."
So you heard his before.
So I got a chance to see how this train wreck is going to go down.
Okay.
And I'm just, okay, just do it, just do it. So he walks out with that deer in the headlights look, and I thought, "Oh, here we go." So I walk in, and there's no microphone. And Betty is standing next to a boombox, and she goes, "Well, this is how we're going to record your audition." I'm like, "I guess we're going OG." Okay, cool. Put it up on your shoulder. So right at that moment, she hands me the copy, and I think, okay, this is going to be terrible. Right at that moment, Jackie said, "Guys, Soccer's been working really hard. He needs a break." So there's a brief pause, And what I think is going to happen is that she's got to take him outside and take care of some business.
Yeah.
But what happened was she reached into a pouch on her belt and she pulled out a tennis ball. And when she pulled out the tennis ball, the dog lost his mind. Like, as insane as any toddler could get about anything, he was like, it's a ball! Like he'd never seen a ball before. Where have you been all my life? Oh! And she threw it to him, and he just went crazy. And so he's chasing it around. He's literally throwing it up in the air. And at that moment, I thought, I got nothing to lose. So I tossed the copy, and I just started ad-libbing what I thought must be going through the dog's head at that moment.
Okay.
Wow.
And I'll never be able to recreate it, but it was very high energy. It was all of that. And this went on for maybe 2 minutes. I vaguely remember there being some laughter in the room. And then finally Jackie swooped down and she picked up the ball and put it back in her pouch. And so I kind of stopped and the room got quiet. And I looked over at Betty and I said, okay, is he ready to go now? Should we do the audition? And she goes, oh, no, we did the audition. And I was like, oh, no. She goes, no, we recorded the whole thing. And I was like, oh, no. And I just thought I had completely boned myself out of a job. And, you know, they shook your hand and thank you very much. And I walked out and I thought, well, okay, that could have gone better. And then what happened after that was several months went by and I hadn't heard anything.
Nothing.
And I had learned, okay, you got to let it go.
Right.
You got to let it go. And then people that were friends of mine in the industry started calling me and congratulating me.
Wow.
Like, hey man, congratulations! I hear Wishbone got picked up. That's awesome. Can't wait to, you know. And so my friend Bobby Trevino had called, and Bobby does special effects. He was already signed to work on the show, and one or two other people who were crew guys that I met from doing commercials and whatever.
Sure.
Well, but nobody had called me to tell me I had the job. So finally, my agent called and she said, "Well, it's between you and one other guy. They want to meet with you." I said,
wow.
Okay. So I went in, and that was even worse. Because now it's like, we want you to sit at the end of this long conference table that's full of people and tell us why we should let you live.
Man.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I know.
they had several spec scripts out on the table and they just started throwing them at me. Henry Ford Part 1. No, Romeo and Juliet from Shakespeare. Hound of the Baskervilles. And it was like rapid fire. How quickly can you find the dog in a character situation?
Man.
And it was awful.
It was awful.
So I left that meeting and I called my agent and I said, listen, I have to get out of town for a few days. This is very stressful. So my uncle had a cabin in the Smoky Mountains.
Okay.
And I said, I'm going up. I'm going to drive myself up to the Smokies. Don't call me unless it's good news. I gave her the number. And I drove all night to get up to the cabin. I got up there and about 2 days in, finally relaxed. I can hear the birds chirping. I'm having my coffee. The phone rings.
Wow.
It's my agent. She's like, "It's you. They want you." And so then we talked for an hour about what that entailed. And I was 24.
Okay.
Had never worked in television before, and I'm like, wait a minute. I just agreed to work 6 days a week, 14 hours a day for a year. That's what I signed up for. Oh, okay. So we talked about, you know, obviously it was PBS. It wasn't like network money, but to a poor boy from East Texas, it was great.
Right.
And so we talked about all of that stuff, all the contractual obligations and this and that and the other thing for about an hour. And then she goes, "Baby, I'm so proud of you. I want you to finish your vacation, come home and go to work." And I said, "Thank you." And I heard her hang up. And then I heard another voice on the line go, "They gonna pay you to be on a TV show?" And that was when I realized that my uncle, because he was so far up in the boondocks, he had a party line. So it was a phone line that was shared with 5 other families on the mountain. So every time the phone rang, everybody picked up.
Man.
And most of the time, it's like, oh, it's not for me. I'll just hang up. Well, this guy stayed on the phone for an hour listening to all of the details about what I was going to do. So we had all these questions. So I spent another 20 minutes on the phone going, well, no, it's, yes, it is a television show, but you're not actually going to see me on the television show. I'll be doing a dog. He goes, well, dogs don't talk. I'm like, I know dogs don't talk, but it is television. You should watch some television, and you'll understand that you have to sort of suspend your disbelief. But that was how it all got started for me. And then I came back. That was July of '94.
Wow.
Came back, and we started, I think, 1st of August, 1994, and never looked back for an entire year. We had 52 weeks to shoot 40 episodes of a film television show. It was a lot.
See, this is all the stuff that's so fascinating because I have some of the same stories because this was done in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't done a lot of this, so the auditions weren't ordinary.
No, our television shows were petri dishes for how do we do this? How do we make television?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same thing for me.
Yeah.
You know, next thing I never done any of this stuff, and you're auditioning, and next thing you know, you're on TV and you're touring, and you're doing all these things.
Yeah.
So the same thing. So it's fascinating how all this happened.
Yeah.
And you know, for a lot of us with the early days of Barney, like same thing. I didn't find out for like I auditioned. They were like, "Thanks," and
we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Well, they didn't even do that, you know. And that's a friend of ours, Dennis DeShazer.
Yes.
Who we'll talk about Dennis later, and I love him to death. And he's even today go, "Oh, I feel so bad if I." I said, no, I get it. I
Dennis is always have you ever had a conversation with Dennis in which he wasn't apologizing about something? I hope you're watching this, Dennis.
Wow.
And please don't call me now and say, I'm sorry that I'm apologizing all the time.
We love Dennis, and I want to talk about that later because
Yeah.
you worked on one of his projects. But it is fascinating that we had to jump through a lot of hoops, not because they were making it tough on us, but they were figuring out, you know, how do we make a dog?
So tell me if this was the experience that you had on Barney. Because I talked to you a little bit. I talked to Bob quite a bit back in the day. But it seemed to me that on both of our shows, which we were shooting concurrently, that a lot of times it was an exercise in learning what not to do.
Man.
Right?
Oh, sure.
So it was like, well, see, it's like we would always say on set, we'll file that under seemed like a good idea at the time. Not doing that anymore. Now we've learned. Now we move on. So you're always making these adjustments all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Until you finally got to a place where you're like, okay, wait a minute. I think we might actually have this figured out. You know, there's going to be a catastrophe somewhere down the line.
Absolutely.
But it was such a cool opportunity to be able to do that at home.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I've known many actors who had to travel long distances for long periods of time to work on television shows, and it's just not the same.
Wow.
If you can't go home every night.
Yeah.
And it was really cool for all of us on both of our shows to be learning all this stuff at the same time. And it, you know, we just feel like we kind of grew up becoming TV people in our own backyard, which was great.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by the 40 episodes because that's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, we had no idea we were getting into. We said yes to anything they threw at us. 40 episodes in 52 weeks? No problem.
Yep.
On film? Yeah. Turn the world around every week.
Wow.
Sure.
Well, you just do it. We'll
So I got to tell you, man, because we had over, on our crew, just crew, we had well over 175 people.
Wow.
You'd have to.
Yeah. And so, and those people didn't get any sleep.
Wow.
Every single department worked their butts off all the time. It was just amazing, man. You'd walk through. Of course, our backlot was right behind you guys at Color Dynamics back in the old days.
Yeah.
And so you'd drive into work and you'd walk down the road, and you're in Victorian London, and then next week you're at a French castle. And I'm like, that was not there a week ago.
Man.
There's a castle there, you guys. Can everyone see the castle, or is it just me? And it was just amazing the work that they did. But again, you just got tireless, creative people who really believe in what they're doing.
Well, Barney was the same.
Yeah.
Everyone believes so much in what you're doing, and you can make those things happen if you have a cast and a crew that believe 100%. So I know people want to know, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and in fact, the producers were fascinated by hearing this. So, 5 dogs, actually.
Yes.
Soccer was...
He was the principal. So every photo shoot, every live appearance, most of the close-up stuff, that was Soccer the dog. Yeah. And he had a very charactered look. I think after the first few episodes, Jackie actually started taking vegetable dye and putting the little paw print, because he had naturally had some brown coloring on this white ear, and she was like, you know, if I do just a little bit of that and a little bit of that, that's a paw print. Does that work for you guys? And all the marketing people went, oh my God, that's awesome. Yes. But then we also he had 4 stunt doubles.
Okay.
He had Slugger, Shiner, Phoebe, and Bear. And they were all Jack Russell Terriers.
Okay.
Wow.
And they each had particular talents. And so, for example, Phoebe,
Okay.
you could do anything to Phoebe. She didn't care. She was the most laid back. For a Jack Russell Terrier to be laid back, that's not usually something you say in the same sentence.
Sure.
But she was just very easygoing. So, for example, anytime we had to, Wishbone had to fly,
Okay.
which he did have to do in a few episodes, we'd trust Phoebe up and just whirl her around, and she's like, "This is great," She didn't care. And then Slugger was our agility dog.
Okay.
So Slugger was sprints, the script said Wishbone bounds through the alley.
Yeah.
That would be and jumps over a wheelbarrow or whatever. That would be Slugger. Shiner was his nickname on set, at least for some of us, was Dopey because he was just so easy going. You can do anything to him too, but he didn't care if he got muddy, sticky, wet. So and there was quite a lot of that in some of the episodes.
Well,
so he was our what do we call him? Our nature dog. He was our nature dog. And then we actually had an understudy for soccer, and his name was Bear. Jackie.
You have to.
Yes, because I think when we started in '94, soccer was already 7, maybe 8.
Okay.
So he wasn't old by any stretch of the imagination, but he was definitely distinguished.
Sure.
And so Jackie had been, ever since we'd started the show, she'd been casting a wide net looking for a Jack Russell that was close approximation to soccer. She found Bear. I can't remember where she found him. It might have been somewhere in California, but I remember when he showed up on set, production just stopped because it's a puppy.
Yeah,
it's a puppy.
Right.
And and everybody was just like, "Oh!" And Jackie's like, "Please get away from the puppy. We all have a job to do. Just do your job." So, so he was our understudy, and she was in the process of training him, and he actually featured a little bit in the 2nd season.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
wow.
Because what we haven't mentioned yet is that you also had children.
Yes.
Which, of
Wow.
course, we talked about with Barney. You've got laws when they can be on set, when they have to leave set. So you're dealing with that, and then you're dealing with animals.
So, as you well know, at the start of every workday, the clock is ticking.
Yep.
And there's usually someone on set, usually someone called an AD or an assistant director, that is watching the minutes.
Yep.
Because, we've got these crazy things called child labor laws.
Yes.
And I don't know if they were any different. I never, fortunately we had very smart people, as I'm sure you did, take care of all that. But your demographic and the kids that were on your show were younger than the kids on my show.
Yes.
And as I said a little earlier, that's a different kind of cat herding.
Right.
Have you even talked about that in any of your episodes? Because I kind of want to know what that was about, man. Did you have wranglers on the set?
We did. So we had a child wrangler on the set.
Okay. Just one?
Wow.
Just one.
That must have been a hard job.
You had a teacher and a child wrangler.
Yeah.
The teacher was with the kids that were going to be on the next week's show.
Okay.
Or were on the show before.
Yeah.
Some of our kids were quite young.
Yeah.
So we knew as the performers, we couldn't miss. It was a bad. If I messed up, I had to nail it every time because the last thing you wanted is a perfect take from the kids, and one of the diners messed it up. Carrie, could you come here, please? We'd like to talk to you.
Can we have a word, please?
Yes. Yeah. So you knew you had to. That's where the pressure came in.
Oh,
with
that's
those kids, and of course, I was telling you earlier, we'd have one just in the middle of a scene walk off.
Yeah.
I go to the bathroom or my finger or something like that. Well, they're kids. Yeah. Of course that stuff happens. So you prepare for it. But we didn't have much live animals, so I'm curious when you add soccer, because there's got to be times where soccer didn't want to do something.
There were, but those were usually late in the day.
Okay.
The one thing I will say is that the breed of Jack. First of all, let me back up here. Because of the show, beginning in 1995, for a couple of years, the most popular dog in the country to buy was a Jack Russell Terrier.
Was that Frazier?
Yes.
When all
his dog was also a Jack Russell. And this drove Jackie Captain crazy because when we went out in support of the show, we do radio or television interviews, we do live appearances. The first thing she would say to anybody who was listening is, don't get a Jack Russell as a pet. They're a working class dog. If they're not working, they're going to destroy your home. And I will give you a classic example of this. We've talked about being on the road, traveling and all that. The fact that the dog always flew first class.
Yeah, we were always in the back.
Meanwhile, back in steerage, Carrie and Larry are like, I hope this thing doesn't go down.
Yeah. How you doing, soccer? What's going on?
No, they would close that curtain. Please don't talk to the dog.
Yeah, Mr. Stinson.
This is a story about us being on the road.
Okay.
We were in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
This would have been in '96, I think.
Wow.
And the Clinton administration had a literacy initiative going on.
Okay.
They had asked us to be a part of it.
Sure.
And so it was, we'd been in town for a few days, and then this was a Saturday. And the day started early, like 6 a.m. Oh. And we'd done a radio interview, we'd done television interview, we'd done a live in-store appearance, and then it culminated with this big party on the Ellipse, which is the 52-acre park south of the White House.
Okay.
Wow.
Lots of celebrities there. I think Kobe Bryant was there, Faith Hill. There's a lot of people performing and reading stories. And they had asked Soccer to come out and me to do the voice while he read the kids a story. So we finished that event, and now we're in the car going back to the hotel, and we're all exhausted.
Wow.
And Jackie Captain is one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
And she's very focused, and it was really hard for her sometimes out on the road. She never really got to loosen up and have fun. So I would always say, Jackie, just come down to the bar in the hotel and have a drink with us. Just have a drink. Oh, I can't.
Wow.
Well, I finally got her this time. I said, Jackie, just one drink, 15 minutes, just so you can relax a little bit. I want you to have some fun on this trip. She goes, you know what? I'm going to do it. So we got back to the hotel. We all went up to our rooms. We agreed to meet down in the lobby bar. Jackie's last. She gets down. She orders a drink. And I finally see this hardworking woman start to relax. And I'm like, awesome.
Right. 5
minutes later, this gentleman in a suit comes walking through the bar. Jackie Captain? Looking for Jackie Captain? She raises her hand. She goes, I need you to come with me. We've been getting noise complaints from your room.
Oh, man.
And so our special events person turns white as a sheet.
Do you know who it was?
Jackie.
Yeah, special events person?
It was Kathy Schumacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know Kathy very well.
Yes, and I love you.
And I love you too.
So Jackie jumps up out of her chair, doesn't even drop her drink. She's like, let's go. And I had nothing to do with this, but I got to see what's going on.
Right.
So I'm trailing behind this motley crew of people. We get up to the hotel room. She keys open the door. And Wishbone is basically rock starred the hotel room.
Okay.
Like he pulled the Joe Walsh in that hotel room. Your audience is old enough to know who Joe Walsh was, but just in case you don't, he was in the Eagles, and he was famous for trashing his hotel rooms.
Wow.
So the bed linens are off the bed and kind of chewed up. This nice chair missing a corner. There's this black ticking underneath the bed that kind of holds the box spring together. All that's yanked out.
Wow.
And I nearly hurt myself internally trying not to laugh. I'm no help at all in this situation. I'm just like, I'm gonna go back downstairs. So I beat it, and I'll never know how she did it, but Kathy managed to get us not kicked out of the hotel. That poor woman had to deal with so much, because I was a huge pain. I was young and stupid, and you know, and I. Honestly, part of my job was when we would do these live appearances would be to work the crowd. Because they're all waiting in line to get a picture with the dog who's inside the store. There's these long lines. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, well, just work the crowd, you know, be yourself and whatever. And I don't like crowds. That's very hard for me. But that was, I was like, see, this is why you shouldn't ride up in first class all the time.
Wow.
This is what first class and free booze for a dog does for you, man. It's just terrible.
Oh my gosh. I did not know that story. Sucker was well behaved when
He was a perfect gentleman when he was working. Well, here's what had happened. I didn't tell you exactly.
And that set is a controlled environment.
Yeah. So what had happened was she usually always crated him. And I guess he was so blown out from the day's events that as soon as she got into the room, he jumped up on the bed and immediately went to sleep. I mean, just boom. And she thought, he'll be fine for 5 minutes.
Man.
He wasn't. He wasn't. He got up and he's like, I'm about to do my impression of Keith Moon or Mick Jagger. Watch this. Boom.
Oh my
Just blew it up. So that was one of the questions I'm often asked is, how often did you get to hang out with Soccer? And the answer is on set, almost never. We were both on set, but I was behind a microphone and he was doing his job. But it was when we were on the road that I actually got to know him a little better. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he was a rock star,
man.
So let's go there, because it's funny when you said that. The questions you're most often asked. I'm obviously asked, was it hot in there? That's the one I've gotten millions of times. So what are the questions that people want to know from you?
I am often asked, where did you come up with the voice? That's always a pretty popular question, and the answer to that is I didn't really.
Okay.
I will be the first to say that when I auditioned for and was cast in the role of Wishbone, I wasn't a particularly good actor.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What I could do was I was pretty decent at improvisation. I mean, it was clearly based on that audition.
Sure.
That was what got me the gig.
Right.
And I was so focused on getting the personality of the dog in the voice that I wasn't really thinking about a voice per se. And a couple years later, I had the great pleasure of meeting a great voice actor by the name of Dan Castellaneta.
Okay.
Wow.
He's the voice of Homer Simpson and many other voices.
Yes.
And we got to chatting one time, and he said, well, if you listen to the first 2 seasons of The Simpsons, it sounds nothing like every...
Though, the third season of Symptoms, one of the episodes of Symptoms got banned for no reason because of racism. Continue on.
Thing after that, and that was because I was trying... He has openly said he was patterning the voice of Homer Simpson after the character Walter Matthau, or the actor Walter Matthau.
Wow.
So it was a lot of... boy. And then he goes, but the writing was so good, and Homer's emotions would have to swing back and forth. Then it became up in your throat, and he's like, oh, no, and that was where it began to live.
Sure.
Wow.
That's kind of what happened with Wishbone. If you watch the first 2 or 3 episodes over the course of the first season, which is 40 eps, you'll hear the voice change.
Okay.
Because now I was more comfortable with the personality, but even still, I wasn't deliberately trying to create a character voice, and that is something that I often tell young voice actors, is that don't try to go for the voice first. Mm-hmm. You have to go for the character first. What's the personality and all that? And so once I did that, and I would start to get excited, and then my voice would start to go up, and then that just was where he lived all the time, and that was fine. But I wasn't conscious.
But where did he start?
Oh, it started with just me.
But I mean,
it was like 23-year-old me. It's like, I guess I'm going to do this now. Okay, well, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to,
So you were just doing your regular
I
voice?
was just really trying to, it was energy, right? I was trying to create energy. And then we figured out pretty quickly that I needed to be on set for principal photography because I think maybe like the first couple of days of the very first episode, they had a script supervisor reading my lines, and the timing just wasn't working.
Wow.
So they called me in, and they're like, we're paying you enough. I think you should do this. And I'm like, yeah, happy to, Right. So then my friend Michael Haynes, who was recorded all the sound on the show, he rigged a system where I would have a high 8 monitor so I could see what the camera saw, and then he would run a speaker out by the camera to the set so that the human actors could hear me speaking. And then I could always hear them through the boom mic. And so we had a situation set up whereby I could act with them.
Yeah.
And that solved that issue. There were many more issues to solve.
Oh, sure.
But that one Michael solved for us pretty quickly, and then it was even great for the editors because again, this was a film TV show. So the editors now, Michael would record me doing my thing.
Right.
And now the editors had a vocal track to work against.
Yeah.
Instead of me just, blindly with no imagery or whatever, just reading the lines.
Wow.
And that was really when the magic of the show started to come out, was in the editing process, the editors will always find something that wasn't in the script.
Right.
That it was like it was too good looking a shot to take it out. Right.
Yeah,
But there's nothing scripted for it. So Larry, make it funny.
Well, we did that stuff too.
Yeah.
Wow.
We could do the same thing. They could add if they needed to, and those mics were live for the dinosaurs.
Now you had Bob in your head, right? Like you could.
So now I was with Dean.
Oh, Dean, I'm sorry.
I did some stuff with Bob.
Yeah.
But on the TV shows with Dean.
It was a Dean.
Yeah.
But you had him like, he was in your head.
He was in my head. They had 4 monitors because it was 4
Did you have to
cameras
do a
in
lot
ours.
of counseling after that? Because I know Dean. He's in my head, man. He's in there all the time.
And he will never leave my head.
Oh no.
He will never leave my head. But yeah, so they would leave a live mic because on the songs they were pre-recorded. But same kind of thing. If I did a jump or they just had to add something,
Right.
we could do.
And he was watching you too, right?
Yeah,
Like he
yeah.
could
But
see
they
it.
had 4 monitors.
Oh,
We had,
well.
well, because we had 4 cameras, so we
Yeah.
weren't doing film.
Yeah.
So 4 cameras, so they could.
What was your vision like in that suit? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just tunnel all the way, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, you just got to the point where you knew the set.
Yeah, and
It is-
trusted that
yeah.
your body would remember.
Yeah,
That's over there.
There's
this is that.
There's some Yoda action.
I
there.
remember Jeff telling the story. I think it might have been on your
Jeff-
podcast
you're talking
about Jeff Ayers.
Jeff Ayers.
About coming down, and this was at a live show, I think. Coming down the treehouse steps, and it went really horribly wrong, or was that during the show?
Well, it happened several times. It happened several times in the show. It happened several times in the show.
Oh, Jeff, man.
Yeah, we are both huge fans of Jeff Ayers.
Yeah.
He's one of the funniest people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. These 2 worlds.
Yeah, it was interesting to think that that's how my career started, because very few young people get that chance.
No,
And I don't think at the time any of us had a real good sense of the legacies that these shows were going to leave.
Yeah.
no question.
That 20, like, this is a true story, not making this up.
Yeah.
Purple Woods fans. Last week, I got a fan letter.
Oh wow.
It's 25 years
Yeah.
since we did the show.
Yeah.
And I got a fan letter from a woman who was a kid, and I just wanted to let you know that, it was that TV show that gave me a love of reading, and I'm an avid reader to this day. My kids read, and I just thought, man, you can do worse than having people remember you for what you did when you were just a punk kid and didn't know any better. You were just happy to have a regular paycheck.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm curious because what I learned very quickly is the responsibility. Right, when I was getting into this, I wanted a job.
Wow.
So,
Sure.
when they asked me to get in a cut, sure, I'll do that. Can you dance? Sure, I can dance. You can do all those
I will
things.
do anything.
And then when Barney got out and met the fans, and I realized this is their best friend. This is their friend. They trust him. He's real. So Carrie had to disappear, and all of a sudden, there was a responsibility to it.
And honestly, I think you had the greater burden to bear because I didn't have that. Keep in mind that, we were doing our show, we were both doing our shows in what I called the ET generation. So there was the entertainment shows like Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood.
Yeah.
So, people were always and early on fascinated with behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Now, preschool audience, not so much. Barney's Barney.
Right.
Right? There's no person inside Barney. That's Barney.
No question.
But our demographic for Wishbone, which turned out to be much larger than we initially thought, and we didn't learn this until
what
we got
age
into
was
the-
it?
Well, I think originally 9 to 13.
Okay.
We were trying to hit kids right at the point where they're going to start reading real books,
Wow.
real stories, and we wanted to introduce them to classic literature in a way that wasn't so intimidating, right? But what we found out pretty quickly was there were college kids watching the show.
Yeah.
I used to regularly get letters from a retirement community in Springfield, Vermont. True story. And so the reach was, we weren't expecting it, right? But I didn't have that responsibility because there was no pressure right? It was the dog and the guy who did the voice of the dog.
So everyone kind of understood that.
They all were happy to peek behind the curtain and
Sure.
go, oh, it's that guy. So all I had to do was basically not embarrass myself on the road. I wish I could say I did that every time, but no. So it was a different kind of responsibility. I didn't have to be in character. You know, I of course I would do the voice when people asked me to do the voice. And I would take pictures with people and sign whatever.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that kind of magic that had to be maintained.
Right.
Because
they understand.
Because that's their friend Barney.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, you don't you don't Penn and Teller that.
Right.
You know, you keep the illusion, and
Yeah.
that's what made it so great.
Yeah. It's interesting. All right, so we have lots of mutual friends that worked on both shows.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm just going to throw out some names.
Okay.
We're going to start with my good friend, and I know yours too, Randy Dalton.
Wow.
Randy, we called him the Money Man.
Yeah.
Randy was that behind the scenes guy that every week he would go, "You want how much money for a what now? That are you going to use it? This is going to be in the show." All right, we'll figure it out. You know, it's just like we drove him crazy. It's like, oh, hey, man, what's the possibility that we could get 200 extras on horseback riding through for the battle scene for Joan of Arc? Can we get that? That shouldn't be a problem, right? You can just write a check, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, but I know Randy from that too. Mr. Stinson, can I talk to you for a second?
Oh.
Mr. Went, can I?
I never got called to Randy's office. You really must have done something. You got called to Randy's office because now I got called to Rick Duffield's office plenty of times.
Well, there was things you're gonna laugh at me. So Barney was. I mean, I was pretty intense with that. I had a time where I fell several times, as we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get a root canal one time.
Oh.
And I would go to him and talk my way into. You know, I know we don't do the concussion stuff now, but back in that day, and I would, because the producers and directors would be like, "I need to see a doctor's note," or this and that. And I actually was in several times that maybe wasn't the best idea, but I would go to Randy and I'd say, "Randy, can you? Randy, I want.
Randy,
can you? Yeah."
Randy.
He was on my side.
He was a great advocate for himself. But I also have to give Randy kudos because he basically looked at this ridiculous boy from Texas and went, "I'm going to put some culture into you. This is wine. You don't drink it out of a can. This is a nice restaurant. You wear a collar on your shirt." You know, stuff like that. And thank you, Randy. Love you, buddy.
Karen Gatewood.
Oh, man, Karen. So, on our show, Karen had arguably the hardest job.
Man.
She was the extras coordinator. So literally when I made that crack about 200 people running through on horseback, before Karis Turpin, our visual effects shooter, could step in and go, "Hey, I only need about 25 people for that. Because we're going to put them in a grid and then we're just going to move them around and it'll be all the magic of the camera." You know, whoever was directing that episode, it was usually somebody like Fred Holmes.
Yeah, which we will talk about.
Would be like, "Karen, I need like 200 people on horseback and I need them to ride through." Now, that's the only time we're ever going to see them. But I just need them for that. It may be, I don't know, 5 seconds. But I need 200 of them. All horses. All on horses with spears and, you know, armor and just going to ride through. So, all right, I need them like tomorrow morning. You know, and like, and somehow she would make it happen.
Man.
So, yeah.
So let's go there with Fred Holmes.
Fred Holmes, great director.
Yes.
World traveler.
Yes.
Wow.
And I always said that I was pretty sure that H. Ross Perot had an illegitimate son, and it was Fred Holmes. Because if you put them in interviews side by side, they sounded and acted exactly the same. And Fred was, you know, he just Fred. He's like, "Yep." My favorite thing that Fred used to say after he'd already shot you 30 times on one take would be like, "Well, let's shoot one more just because it came all this way." Used to drive Jackie up the wall too. because, you know, he could make you dance like a monkey 30 times.
Man.
After 10 times, the dog was like, you know what? You're not the boss of me.
I mean, I have so many great Fred Holmes stories, but we went to Universal Studios and shot a video called Burning the Land of Make Believe.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And in each day of shooting, we had one part of the park.
Okay.
That we had to shoot that, like, we didn't get the next day. So it had to happen on that day,
Sure.
whatever it may be.
Well, I talked about it on LJPCBM last year, but anyway, let's continue on.
And so there was this part, we had this magician, and so they created this whole lair and all this, and I mean, we were dancing and going and going and going and going, and just wore us down. This was with Jeff Ayers and Kyle Nelson was playing BJ at the time. And we had to get one more shot of the three dinosaurs going across this bridge. And so Fred was going to get it from back here of us going the bridge. And we're done. I mean, physically, we're done.
Yeah.
There are noises coming out of it's done. And Shauna Mass was there.
Yeah.
Going, I mean, I'll try. I don't know what they're going to do. And so we made it across once. And you hear Fred, well, I need to get another one.
Yeah. He was
and you see Jeff Ayers just
just toddling. Nope.
You've just lost Baby Bob.
Nope.
Fred's like, what do you mean?
Well, what I mean, Fred, is he walked away. That's what we mean.
But we all understood what Fred was doing. I mean, he was always trying to get the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I love you, Fred, very much. But yeah, he would push as far as he could go.
If it's worth doing once, it's worth doing 100 times.
Ben Vaughn.
Who? The late great Ben Vaughn.
Yes.
Yeah.
We love very much.
I first met Ben. I'm trying to remember what was the first episode he worked on. He directed Wishbone. I'll have to look it up later. But I just thought that Ben.
Let me check Ben Vaughn and see. I'll be right there and we'll continue on. It's on Boy Wiki and see. It's not American singer and songwriter. It's a okay. Continue on.
And step right out of a 1950s sitcom. His mannerisms, the way he talked, the gestures that he made, and without fail, would always find a very high-sounding word that most people did not have in their lexicon. I remember we had a sound assistant. Michael Haynes' sound assistant was this tiny girl called Lori Heidenreich. And one day, Fred just glances over, Ben glances over and goes, "You're looking very recalcitrant today."
Wow.
And she did not know what to say to that, I think because she didn't know what that word meant. And he was clearly waiting for an answer. And so Lori went, "Oh, okay." And that seemed to satisfy Ben, and then we moved on from there. But, and he just had the greatest Jack Benny impression of anybody I've ever known.
Because you told me you guys had a little contest.
Rochester, he would always do that Jack Benny move from the show. And there exists somewhere a photograph. Because if you hung around Ben long enough, you kind of sort of started morphing into Ben. And we're sitting in director's chairs, and Ben's natural state was this. And I'm sitting there doing the exact same thing, completely unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And Carol Kaleson, our PR stills, just stepped in and snapped a picture. And then that one was, everybody was talking about that one. But Ben always had good ideas about how a scene should go.
Wow.
And he usually would come at you, at first you'd be like, that seems contraindicated. But then you do it a couple of times and be like, oh, I remember, what scene was it? I'll never remember the episode, but he left the set to walk back to my booth, which was located outside of the set. We had stage A and stage B, and then I sort of existed in a little booth in between. And he walks out, and he leans into my microphone with me in the booth, and he goes, "Michael, turn off the microphone."
Wow.
And he goes, "I need you to act this scene." Because it was a semi-serious scene. It was in the fantasy world. Okay. And I'm like, "I'm doing it." He goes, "No, you're still trying to get the laugh. This is a serious scene. I want you to act the scene. Don't be afraid to act the scene. What's actually happening? Have you read the book?" I'm like, "Yeah, I read the book." "So, this is a character moment for you. This is what they pay you for." And I was like, "Okay." So I walked back out, or he walked back out, and action. We did the scene, cut, and he just leaned up into the boom and goes, "Exactly." And I was like, wow, okay. So I can actually be an actor on this show and not just be a goofy dog voice. So that's my best Ben story.
I love it because Ben and Fred both pushed me to be better and all that. Even, you know,
they were
to get you to think about a purple dinosaur.
Yeah, but they were never going to be satisfied with just letting you clown around.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I love, and it's really funny. Texans, both of them.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Well, we talk about Texas a lot on this show.
Yeah.
I'm a proud Texan, and I love what we've done with Barney and Wishbone. I still believe those shows needed to be done in Texas.
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, it's so funny now because even now, 25, 30 years later, it still feels like a small market where you know everybody, right? Yeah. I was on a shoot last week, and half the crew were people that I came up with.
Wow.
And now there's all these young faces who watched our shows when they were little, and you're just like, oh wow, I guess next generation, that kind of thing. They're taking over. But we're still trying, man. We're still making TV and movies and stuff in Texas. So you hear that, Hollywood?
Another one that we know, we talked a little bit about it, but Dennis the Shazer.
Oh, Dennis.
And you worked on one of his shows, Baz.
Yeah, so I learned in the last week that you're like the godfather around here because Jeff Ayers, who we just talked about. So for those of you who don't know, Jeff was the actor inside Baby Bop. And he's been on your show.
Yes, he was in episode 1.
Yeah. So Jeff, after
he's in. Not only that, he's also in the mariachi video Purple Tales. The formerly known as Purple Tales, but now it's in Purple Roads. Continue on.
A period of time that I couldn't even tell you how long it's been, reached out to me, messaged me, and he goes, "Hey man, do you know about Stenson's podcast?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "Well, you totally need to be on it. Go look at it." So I did. And of course, Jeff, look at my episode.
Of course he did.
So I looked at it, and I'm like, well, hey, man, reach out to Stenson. Let's get together. Let's do this. Let's make it happen. And so you got in touch, and we set this craziness up. But yesterday, so we're taping this on a Tuesday.
That's right.
Yesterday afternoon, early evening, Dennis DeShazer calls me out of the blue.
Wow.
I haven't talked to Dennis probably since, I don't know. Let's see, 2005?
Is that when you all did?
We did a show called Baz the Bear.
Yep.
Wow.
And so he's like, hey, it's been a long time. I'm like, it has been a long time.
Wow.
And then he got right to the point. He was like, I was talking to Stenson about you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is everybody talking to Stenson about me? What's going on? But yeah, so...
See, we come looking for you.
Yeah, well, I'm easy to find. So you knew, obviously, Dennis from Barney.
He's the one that I auditioned for.
Yeah, and then...
with Cheryl and Kathy.
And then I just sort of knew Dennis at that time peripherally. So anytime Lyric would get together the Lions kids and the Big Feet's kids for an event or whatever, that's when our paths would all sort of cross. Right. And I will tell you this story, and Dennis may deny it, but it's true.
All right.
So I had auditioned to do the voice of Baz the Bear. So Baz was a animated series that was straight to DVD.
Wow.
Very much in the vein of preschool. And Baz lived in a treehouse, and his two best friends were Drew and Gracie, and there were songs every episode. I mean, you know the formula.
Yeah.
And so I had done my audition, and it was one of those rare times where... Now, so let me back up just a little bit and talk... I'm going to talk technical for a minute. So, when we did Wishbone, we did voiceover work exactly in reverse. And what I mean by that is, typically in an animated series, the first thing that gets done are the voice actors' performances.
Wow.
And they'll have storyboards.
Right.
They'll have action cues. The director will walk them through. I need you to scream from here to here. I need, whatever. But we didn't have that luxury in Wishbone.
Yeah.
I would talk on set for the benefit of the other actors, but we couldn't use any of that.
Right.
Because Jackie was talking, she was, cueing the dog or whatever. So I would have to go back and re-record a clean episode.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, I'm doing an animated show with Dennis.
Right.
Now, we're doing our stuff first. So it was me and Allison Vitkarin and Holly and Jim Ferranda and Cheryl Lamiter.
I know Cheryl.
I think we were the principals.
I know Cheryl.
And it was really a different experience for me.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
to get back to what I was talking about, I'd done my audition. I hadn't heard anything. Now I'm a jaded actor. I'm like, well, you do it and you walk away. If it's meant to happen, it'll happen. I got a call from Tim Sissel. Now, Tim was the guy who I'd known for years because we worked together on Wishbone. He'd done the music. He composed all the music for Wishbone. And he had been hired by Dennis and Jeff Gittle to do all the music for Baz, to write all these songs.
Huh.
And he goes, hey, man, because that's how Tim talks. He goes, hey, I got to tell you, this job's yours to lose, man, but you're going to have to... I'm like, what do I have to? He goes, well, I think Dennis and Jeff have an idea that you're kind of hard to work with.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, crap. Okay, let's see. How do I... He goes, come over to my house. We're going to talk about it. So I go to Sissel's house, which is also his studio, and, over a bottle of good Irish, we sit there and hash it out. And I finally said, well, look, you got to get me in the room with these guys so I can just talk to them face to face.
Yeah.
And first thing I'd said was, I will admit, I'm much more laid back now than I was in my early 20s when I didn't know anything. But I would challenge anybody who said I was difficult to work with. What I am is passionate. And yes, sometimes I'm a jackass, but we all are.
Right.
So I said, if you give me a chance, you
Viewer discretion is advised, ladies and gentlemen. Continue on.
will see that I can be just as passionate about anything. And so I think what they did was they crossed their fingers and like, let's make him the guy. So we had our first recording set. Now what we did, we recorded all the lines for Baz as an ensemble, which is also something you don't normally do in animation.
Wow.
So we'd all get together at Real Effects and we'd do that. But then to do the songs, I would go back to Tim's house and up into his studio. So it would be me and Tim and Jeff and Dennis.
Yeah.
Just the four of us. Jeff, yeah. And I know for a fact that we used Tim Sissel and I, because we're both Irish and we're both very passionate.
Yeah.
And we both like music. Like we love, that's his whole job, and it's a big passion of mine.
Yeah.
So when we would disagree about a key change or this or a timing issue, we'd start just ragging on each other. And I could see Dennis start to shrink into his chair, like, I don't want this conflict right now. And poor Jeff Gittle would just be like, what's going on? What's happening right now? And I at one point, I looked at Tim and I was like, I think we're making them nervous. And Tim's like, oh, no, we do this all the time. No, here's how it's going to go down. We're going to fight verbally. We're going to go outside and punch each other, hug it out, and we're going to come back and finish the song. So that's how it's going.
Man.
So, bless Dennis DeShazer's heart, because he was so very patient with us. And, he's one of those guys that you can't not love him. He's just, because he's just got this passion and this drive, and he loves kids, and he created this, he co-created this legacy property that still people talk about today. You're doing a podcast.
Wow.
So, that's what you can say about a guy like that is, keep doing what you're doing. Go ahead.
Well, I called him up before I did this podcast because I highly respect him. Yeah. He's an amazing man.
He's a sweet, sweet man.
He is.
He is. What are you doing these days?
Still behind the microphone, obviously. I find that as I get older, I really like the solitude of writing.
Wow.
So a few years ago, I started a blog where I was just basically dumping my purse out onto the internet, you know, like you do.
Wow.
But that actually turned into a memoir. So I wrote a memoir.
Okay.
This past year, a good friend of mine who's a producer in San Antonio, we had started talking. We had a lot in common in that we both lost our fathers very early. And so I said, well, tell me your story, because she knew mine. And at the end of her telling me the story, I'm like, you know what, that would make a great film. And then she challenged me to write it. I'd never written a screenplay in my life. So I did. And we're currently trying to make that into a little independent feature film a year later.
Wow.
You know, I really like the creative solitude of writing. Now, I also love music. And I have a little band here locally. We're just acoustic, but we like to do harmony stuff. So it's old.
I've heard some
American roots and porch music and, you know, bluegrass and that kind of thing. We love singing together. We've done that now for over 10 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a thing I like to do, and that is one place.
Play local.
We play Allen, Frisco, McKinney, Plano.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of my friends who live south of 635 who think that you need a passport to get up north.
Yes.
You don't. You don't. You can just come up anytime you want and see us. We're here.
And you're always invited.
Yeah. But professionally, yeah, I still do a lot of voice work. I do these days. I do a lot of anime.
Oh, very cool.
Wow.
And I worked on a couple of big video games last year that are out and very popular right now, which is a lot of fun. So I'm still doing the monkey hustle, man. Just trying to make a buck, you know.
Wow.
It's addicting, isn't it?
I keep thinking the ship's gonna come in, but I keep seeing the ship way out there in the distance. Like, so that no, not okay. Wasn't you? All right.
Yeah, but don't you? I don't think you. Don't you find? I'm trying to figure out how to say this. All these people that love what you did that you didn't realize, there's something about it that, you know, Barney was good to me, but I'm not rich or anything of that nature.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm the most blessed person in the world because of the experience that the children gave back to me and how much they loved it.
Oh, for sure.
Is it not amazing to you to have these people 25 years later?
It's amazing to have grown-ups.
The response
and you know, there was a hashtag trending for a little while on Twitter, and I think the hashtag was #RebootWishbone.
Wow.
So there are a lot of people who would love to see us get back in the saddle, and who knows, it might happen.
We met 5 or 6 coming up to the studio.
Yeah, we did.
Couldn't believe.
Yeah, we did. That was very encouraging. So I try not to. I'm not a person who lives in the past a lot. I have to make myself stop and reflect quite often, and it is an amazing. So I will tell you this poignant story. We shot 50 episodes of Wishbone. That's all we ever shot, and then we shot a movie for Showtime.
Wow.
So that we knew halfway through making the film it was going to be our last hurrah. So this is it. We're not going to make another series. The show was extremely expensive to produce. So we began out in Santa Fe, New Mexico, shooting a Western. And then we finished with the contemporary stuff. So we're back behind Color Dynamics in Allen at the Oakdale backlot.
Wow.
And the last shot we ever did was a big carnival shot. So there's lots of extras and milling around and just the general chaos that goes with having that many people on the set. And finally got all that done. All the extras got released, so only the principals and the crew were left.
Yeah.
And it was getting on to dark. And Rick Duffield, who is not a man of many words, got up in front of us and he said, you know, this is it. This is goodbye, but I want you to remember something. People will not remember what you did on this show, but they will remember this show. They will remember, and you can remember, that you were a part of something important. Yes, we made people laugh. Yes, it was a dog. But here's this, and we were already getting this kind of feedback, which was, thank you, my kid likes to read.
Yeah.
and thank you for finding a way to introduce my kid to classic literature and all of that. So he said that's legacy. That's legacy.
Wow.
When people are still going to be talking about a show that you worked on, that most of us really started our careers on.
Right.
When I think about the number of people whose careers began on that show. So Jensen Ackles, who's in the very popular series Supernatural, he's a Dallas-based actor. First time I think he was ever on TV, at least in a TV series, was on our show. Mo Rocca, who is a wonderful reporter on CBS and has a podcast called Obituaries, he began as a 25-year-old writer on our show. Amy Acker, another great actor who went out and became one of the director Joss Whedon's favorite actors. You know, a lot of people, to say nothing of the crew people that you and I know mutually, and most of them are still in the game.
Yep.
So, but for all of us to be able to look back every so often, not all the time, but every so often, and go, wow, that's not for nothing. That was pretty great. Yeah.
An amazing experience, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't thank you enough for being here, Larry.
Thank you, man. This was great. I really appreciate it.
It's just a pleasure seeing you again.
Yeah.
It's just,
so we are actually going to hang out. You got me on your show.
Yes.
But now we actually get to hang out.
We
right?
will.
Okay, fine.
And we now know how to get hold of Jeff Ayers, so obviously.
Yeah.
Jeff's going to have to join us.
I feel certain you're going to get phone calls from Dennis DeShazer after this.
Well,
I'm not sure that I was as uncomfortable as Larry seems to think I was. Yeah, you were.
Well, thank you so much,
Oh,
Larry.
you bet, man. Anytime. Keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers, brother.
Well, thank you so much for watching Purple Roads. Remember to keep your eyes, ears, and your heart open, and you'll find your purple road. I'll see you next week.
So that was Purple Roads, episode 15. Larry Brantley, the voice of Wishbone. What do I think about this video? It was amazing. It was hilarious at the same time when he said, I don't know what you call it, but anyway. Anyways, that was episode of LJPCBM, episode 4 and 30. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one, which is going to be Dare 3000's Angry German Kid shorts videos. But until next time, so Jerry say goodbye. Peace out, baby. We get more LJPCBM because very soon. Till then, Jerry say out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which is always happening, but I tried all the time. I ask, why me?
Okay, everyone, I want you to move off the stage in an orderly fashion. This is not a drill.
Ma'am, are you all right? Say, aren't you Wanda Gilmore? Don't you own the Oakdale Chronicle?
Yeah.
This is a frightening scene. Are you all right, ma'am?
I'm all right. Are you all right?
Wanda, may I call you Wanda? Wanda, how did you know this accident was going to happen?
Well, I didn't. I didn't, but Wishbone here did, and it was all because of him that I was able to get to Melina in time.
That dog? Quick, get a shot of that animal.
Hello?
With his keen hearing, he knew the lights were going to collapse well before I did. He is the real hero here.
Melina, are you all right?
Oh, Ellen. That was amazing. I didn't do anything. Oh, but you did.
What could have been a tragic event was prevented by a brave and quick-thinking woman. From the Oakdale Summer Carnival, this is Mitch McCain for Fast News 57. Remember, when you're looking for news, look for Mitch McCain.